Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we are, we're tackling one of the more unusual syntheses we've come across.
Definitely. We've got sources starting with, very real, very dry U.S. government scientific surveys, decades of work.
Right, official stuff. But then the analysis takes these sources and springboards straight into, well, interdimensional theories, UFOs, UAPs, and it all gets filtered through ancient religious prophecy.
Exactly. We're looking at excerpts that kick off with the U.S. Navy's Project Magnet, a massive geomagnetic survey. And then almost immediately, we shift into analyzing declassified FBI files like the Roswell stuff, Majestic 12 chatter.
Interpreted through a very, very specific biblical lens.
That's the core of it, yeah. It's quite the interpretive leap.
It really is. So we need to approach this carefully. We'll lay out the documented facts and then explore the highly speculative interpretation built on top of them.
Okay, so let's frame the big question for you, the listener. What did the U.S. government actually find out about Earth's magnetic fields over those decades?
And then how does this one particular theory use those official measurements to argue for the existence of, well, stargates?
Yeah.
And that these gates are supposedly used by fallen angels.
That's the mission for this deep dive. It's a lot to unpack.
Understatement. Okay, let's start with the solid ground. Project Magnet. What was it officially?
Okay, so Project Magnet. It was a major geomagnetic survey effort run by the U.S. Navy Hydrographic Office, which later became NAVAL.
And it ran for a long time.
A really long time. Started in 1951, went all the way through 1994, global scale.
And the official purpose seems pretty straightforward, almost mundane even.
Totally practical. It was for world magnetic modeling and charting, basically making better maps for navigation.
For ships, submarines, airplanes. Because the Earth's magnetic field isn't static, right? It shifts.
Exactly. You need accurate data for compasses and navigation systems. They use these specialized aircraft like the P-2V Neptune.
Oh, yeah, I've seen pictures. Those planes packed with equipment.
Right, equipped with something called a Naval Ordnance Laboratory Type 2 Vector Airborne Magnetometer. Fancy name.
Sounds it. What did it measure?
Both the intensity, the strength, and the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. They flew these planes all over the world collecting data.
And this was cutting-edge stuff back in the 50s and 60s, using planes for this.
Oh, absolutely. And the data was used. They published hundreds of navigation charts, supported scientific research. It was a legitimate, large-scale scientific project.
Okay, but here's where the story turns. The source we're looking at points to something specific in the official record.
Yes. They highlight a line in the project synopsis. It acknowledges the main mission, but then adds that there were also other classified investigations linked to the data gathered by Project Magnet.
The classic classified mention. That's the pivot point for this whole theory, isn't it?
That's exactly it. The source basically says, look, navigation charts were the cover story. The real secret aim, they argue, was to map locations that conduct, and this is their term, concentrated frequencies.
Concentrated frequencies. So like natural energy hotspots in the Earth's magnetic field, not just the general mapping.
Precisely. Nodes or spikes in the grid. Places with unusual magnetic properties.
And the source questions why the project ended in '94. The official reason is usually cited as satellites taking over this kind of mapping, right?
Right. Satellites like MagSat and others made airborne surveys less critical for global models. But the source finds this suspicious. They ask, well, why stop unless you found what you were looking for or the nature of the investigation changed?
So what's their evidence for this hidden agenda beyond just suspicion about the end date?
They focus heavily on the specific flight paths recorded in the project logs. The source claims that certain areas surveyed seem to have no obvious connection to standard air or naval navigation routes or known magnetic mapping needs.
Like they were detouring to check out specific spots.
That's the implication, that these anomalies, these areas with high magnetic readings or strange frequency patterns that didn't really fit the smooth navigational models, those were the actual targets.
Wow. Okay, so the argument is that this decades-long global mapping project, ostensibly for safe travel, was actually a secret hunt for dimensional portals.
Essentially, yes, that's the connection the source makes. These energized sites, these concentrated frequency spots, are proposed to be portals or stargates into other dimensions.
And they connect this to modern physics, too.
They do. They draw a conceptual parallel to places like CERN. The idea being that manipulating highly focused energy, whether it's natural magnetic energy or artificially generated like in a particle collider, is potentially the key to opening doorways between, well, realities.
So the Navy according to this theory, spent over 40 years quietly mapping the natural equivalents of CERN access points.
That's the extraordinary claim being made here, yeah. Finding the naturally occurring thin spots or gateways in the fabric of reality marked by magnetic anomalies.
Okay, this is where it really starts to weave together different threads. If the Navy was secretly mapping these energetic nodes, is the source implying they were also mapping UFO hotspots?
Directly. That's the next major link. The source emphasizes that the timeline of Project Magnet, starting in the early 50s, lines up almost perfectly with the huge surge in UFO sightings after World War II.
And specifically after the use of atomic weapons. That's often cited in UFO lore.
Yes, the source makes that connection explicit. Their argument is that whatever these UAPs are, they were drawn to these concentrated frequency sites, maybe using them, maybe affected by them, and the government realized they needed to understand these locations, maybe even more than they needed updated navigation charts.
And this is where the cover-up allegations really ramp up. Roswell, 1947, becomes central.
Immediately, we jump straight to that famous FBI teletype from the Dallas field office about the flying disc. You know the story.
Officially explained as a high-altitude weather balloon. Mogul Project balloon later.
Right. But the source we're examining says that explanation was just the first necessary layer of public deception. They claim the crash site itself was near one of these significant magnetic anomaly zones.
Okay, so the location was key, according to this interpretation.
Yes. The urgency of understanding both the crashed object and its location, this magnetically charged area, is what, according to the source, triggered the formation of secret government groups.
Which leads us to Majestic 12.
Exactly. The source asserts that President Truman secretly established Majestic 12, or MJ-12, for the specific purpose of examining, understanding, and attempting to reverse engineer recovered. Well, they say extraterrestrial aircraft.
Okay, let's be clear. The source is claiming Truman did this, and that it was directly linked to managing information about these magnetic hotspots found by projects like Magnet.
That's the synthesis they present. They claim the discovery at Roswell, potentially linked to a magnetic anomaly, showed the government that UAP activity and these specific geographical sites were connected.
So how did they manage that information, according to the source?
They claim it involved widespread directives. The source alleges that FBI field offices, and likely other agencies, received instructions to, quote, purposely deceive the public and actively misinform and cover up their investigations.
Cover up what specifically? Just the crashes? Or the locations, too?
Both, but especially the connection between the phenomena and the locations. The source is very specific that the cover-up particularly concerned the significance of what they term sacred sites found all over Earth, which they believe were the primary locations identified by Project Magnet and also areas of high UFO activity.
So the whole government information apparatus, in this view, was oriented towards protecting the strategic value of these specific places on the map.
That's the picture the source paints. Protecting the portals, essentially.
This moves us from the technology and the government response to the occupants. The reports, even early ones like Roswell, sometimes mentioned occupants, often human-like.
Right. But here the source makes another critical distinction. They state very firmly, these beings are not extraterrestrial in the way we usually think of it, like from Mars or Alpha Centauri.
Not E.T., but wow.
Interdimensional, that's the term they use. Beings from another layer of reality accessible via these portals.
And the source identifies who they believe these beings are.
Oh, yes. And this is where the specific interpretive lens becomes unmistakable. According to the source, these interdimensional entities are spirit beings, and they are explicitly identified as the fallen angels mentioned in the Bible.
Fallen angels. So not aliens, but figures from religious scripture.
Correct. The source insists they've been interacting with Earth since before the creation of Adam, framing the entire modern UAP phenomenon not as a new arrival, but as a continuation of an ancient spiritual conflict.
That completely reframes the narrative, doesn't it? From potential first contact to ongoing spiritual warfare.
Fundamentally, it shifts everything from a scientific or exploration context into a theological one.
If they are spirit beings, does the source describe their nature or abilities?
It does. It says they possess radiant energy, suggesting maybe a non-physical or energy-based structure. And crucially, they can re-enter what the source calls the etheric, or access the portals at will.
The etheric. What does that mean in this context? Like another dimension?
Pretty much. The source seems to use etheric to describe a non-physical but adjacent layer of reality. The dimension these beings normally inhabit, accessible through these magnetic gateways or portals, Their ability to phase between our physical reality and this etheric plane is key to their nature, according to this view.
And what's their agenda? Why interact with humans?
The source links their agenda directly to an interpretation of Genesis chapter 6. Remember the stories of the Nephilim.
The offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of man. Yeah, that's a controversial passage.
Extremely. Well, this source interprets that very literally and claims these interdimensional fallen angels are pursuing the same agenda today to, quote, genetically dilute the human genome.
Dilute the genome? How?
Through what the source describes as a hybridization and transhuman endeavor. They explicitly mention acquiring human DNA from abductees.
So the abduction phenomenon is interpreted as part of this genetic or perhaps spiritual corruption program.
Exactly. It's presented as a deliberate, ongoing effort to alter humanity's biological and spiritual makeup. A spiritual war fought on a genetic battlefield, you could say.
And this brings us back to why the source believes mainstream science can't grasp this.
Right. The source argues that the scientific method, by its very definition, tends to exclude or deny non-material, spiritual, or interdimensional realities. It focuses on the measurable, the repeatable, the physical.
Which makes it blind to this kind of phenomenon, in their view.
Exactly. The source calls science short-sighted and inadequate for dealing with these entities because it fundamentally rejects their nature and the physics they supposedly use, like leveraging the etheric plane through these magnetic portals.
So the best science can do, according to this source, is misidentify UAPs as weather balloons or dismiss eyewitness accounts as hallucinations.
That's their critique, yes. That science is trapped in a materialist box and can't see the bigger interdimensional spiritual picture.
Okay, let's connect this back to the locations again. We have these interdimensional beings, these fallen angels, using portals linked to magnetic anomalies. Why those specific spots on Earth?
It comes back to the physics, or maybe the metaphysics, of the locations themselves. The source claims that places we recognize as sacred sites, places of worship, religious centers all around the world, ancient and modern, were originally chosen by these entities precisely because of their inherent electromagnetic properties.
So the pyramids, Stonehenge, ancient temples, cathedrals, they weren't just built randomly or for purely human reasons.
Not according to this source. The argument is that these sites are situated directly over natural pressure points or nodes in the Earth's energy grid, the places with the strongest concentrated frequencies.
Making them natural stargates or secret doors between dimensions.
That's exactly the claim. The source suggests this inherent energetic property is why these sites have been considered holy, sacred, or associated with strange phenomena for thousands of years. They are literally gateways.
Is there a pattern to these sites? The source mentions geometry.
Yes, this gets even more specific. The source alleges that the layout or positioning of these portal sites on Earth follows a pattern derived from Mars.
Mars.
They claim the pattern is based on a triangulation found in the Cydonia region of Mars, the area famous for the face on Mars and the alleged pyramids.
Right, the controversial interpretations of those Martian landforms.
Yeah.
So this source believes there's an intelligent geometric pattern there, and it's replicated on Earth at these portal sites.
Yes, a specific triangulation or geometric relationship between key sites mirrored on both planets.
A deliberate design spanning worlds. But who created the design?
Well, the source goes further. They contend this divine or sacred pattern, this specific geometry, isn't originally from Earth or Mars.
Where that?
It originates, they claim, from heaven itself, the dwelling place of the Godhead.
So it's seen as a kind of divine blueprint.
Exactly. A sacred geometry originating from the ultimate source of creation. But, crucially, the source argues that the fallen angels are the ones who have copied and utilized this divine pattern on Earth, and perhaps elsewhere, like Mars, to establish their own network of access points or domains, corrupting a sacred design for their own purposes.
That sets up the final and perhaps most dramatic part of this source's narrative, the end of days prophecy.
Yes. All of this Project Magnet mapping the portals, the interdimensional beings, the sacred geometry, it all culminates in a specific end times scenario presented by the source.
How do the stargates fit into that?
The source warns that these portals, the very locations possibly mapped by the Navy, will be used to facilitate the full open manifestation on Earth of what they call the ancient alien saviors.
Ancient alien saviors. So the beings will present themselves positively.
That's the core of the warning. The source calls this the ultimate deceptive narrative. They claim this apparent arrival of benevolent aliens or star gods will actually be, in their words, Lucifer's last invasion of Earth, a grand deception.
And this ties into other prophecies.
Yes. They specifically claim this alien arrival narrative will serve a crucial purpose to explain away the sudden disappearance of millions of Christian believers worldwide, an event the source identifies as the rapture.
So people vanish, and the explanation offered to the world will be alien intervention, abduction by the saviors.
That's the scenario presented. Instead of a religious event, it's framed as an extraterrestrial or interdimensional one managed by these seemingly advanced beings who have just arrived through the stargates.
And what's the ultimate goal of this deception, according to the source?
The final step, they claim, is that these powerful star god entities will lend their considerable power and credibility to support the rise of the Antichrist,
Who the source describes as
the human seed of Lucifer. They believe these entities will help establish a false, global 7-year period of peace and security, seemingly orchestrated by these benevolent alien saviors, but actually fulfilling biblical prophecy about the tribulation period. The portals mapped by Project Magnet are, in this view, key infrastructure for this final act.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. We've gone on quite a journey here. We started with a real, documented U.S. Navy project mapping Earth's magnetic field.
Project Magnet, running for over 40 years.
And we've seen how one specific, religiously informed interpretation takes that data, combines it with UFO reports, FBI files, alleged cover-ups,
And theories about sacred geometry on Earth and Mars.
to construct this incredibly detailed narrative about interdimensional fallen angels using magnetic portals, engaging in genetic manipulation, and ultimately paving the way for an end-times deception involving ancient alien saviors and the Antichrist.
It's a remarkable synthesis connecting modern defense projects directly to ancient religious beliefs and cosmic conflict narratives. It really highlights how the same set of facts, or alleged facts, can be woven into vastly different stories depending on the interpretive lens.
Absolutely. And the source makes one final, quite profound claim we should touch on.
Which is?
That these entities, these interdimensional beings, are now somehow all bound to humanity's timeline.
Implying their fate is now intertwined with ours, maybe leading up to that final conflict they described.
It raises a fascinating final thought for you, our listener, to consider. If we take just the physical hypothesis for a moment, setting aside the specific religious interpretation, what if the world's most ancient sacred sites are actually located at points of unusual natural energy, like pressure points in the global electromagnetic grid?
Points that perhaps projects like Magnet inadvertently mapped.
Right. If that physical premise were true, how does understanding Earth's natural physics, its energy grids, potentially change how we look at history, mythology, reports of paranormal phenomena, even the placement of ancient monuments?
It suggests a potential physical basis underlying millennia of spiritual beliefs and anomalous experiences. Definitely something to mull over.
Something to think about until our next deep dive.
We'll see you then.